Hey guys, tonight we're going to let the Earth stop. Not slow down gently. Not win to a calm and responsible halt. No, we're going to imagine what happens if Earth's rotation, its daily spin that has been churning faithfully for over 4.5 billion years, suddenly comes to a full and abrupt stop. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like and subscribe to the video, but only if you really enjoy what I'm doing here. It helps this sleepy little space corner keep spinning, unlike our doomed planet tonight. Also, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your country and local time in the comments, just to remind yourself that time still works where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's start our journey together tonight. Let's begin in the quietest way imaginable, stillness. No more rotation. No more sunrise. No more moonrise. The stars no longer sweep across the sky, they just stare, fixed. You step outside and something feels wrong. The wind is missing. The clouds don't drift. The air is too still. But your body still wants to move. Because even though the Earth has stopped, you haven't. Let's do some sleepy math. At the equator, Earth spins at about 1,670 kilometers per hour. That's over 1,000 miles per hour. You've never felt it, because everything around you moves with you. But if the planet suddenly put on the brakes, you wouldn't be so lucky. Imagine driving a car at top speed, then slamming it into reverse. Everything not bolted down, including you, keeps flying forward. The oceans. The buildings. The trees. Even the air. Some scientists speculate that a sudden stop would launch everything not embedded in bedrock hurtling eastward. Entire cities could be torn from their foundations. Think about that next time you drink tea on your porch. And remember, the air doesn't just sit politely. It continues its momentum, turning into a deadly global gust. Hurricane-force winds, continent-wide, possibly reaching thousands of kilometers per hour. The sky would turn into a sandblasting machine, and you'd better hope you're not standing on the west side of anything. Of course, in this thought experiment, we're not really doing sudden impact physics. We're easing into the strange quiet of a world that's chosen stillness. A world where the sky no longer moves. Where east and west are meaningless. This isn't the first time humans have wondered about this. The ancient Babylonians tracked the heavens obsessively. They would have noticed quickly if the stars had frozen. And the Maya? Their calendars practically demanded the sky stay in motion. A sky without change would have meant divine panic. In more modern science, the idea of a tidally locked planet, one side always facing its star, the other locked in darkness, isn't fiction. We've already discovered many such planets in distant solar systems. The weird part? Some of them might actually be habitable, just along the edge between eternal day and eternal night. But we'll come back to that. For now, your senses are misfiring. The air is too dense in some places, too thin in others. The Coriolis effect, the force that causes ocean currents and storm spirals, is gone. Weather doesn't work the same anymore. Rivers don't flow the right way. Your compass, once trustworthy, now spins with doubt. There's no planetary rotation to anchor the sky, and the world feels off-kilter. And you're struggling with vertigo. Your inner ear, calibrated to a lifetime of subtle spin, feels the absence even if your conscious brain doesn't. Some people describe it like being seasick on land. Some say it's like waking up during an earthquake, but the earthquake never ends. And weirdly enough, your shadow doesn't move. At all. That might be the eeriest detail. No matter what time of day it was when the spin stopped, that's the sky you now live under. A frozen sun, stuck at some awkward angle, glares endlessly from one direction. There's no morning. No golden hour. Just an endless, fixed light. Unless, of course, you're on the dark side. Then it's night. Forever. People living at different longitudes suddenly find themselves in totally different realities. Some in endless daylight, baking under the sun. Others shivering in a moonless dark. the world becomes a patchwork of wildly unequal zones, each facing their own version of the apocalypse. But oddly, the silence is the same everywhere. A deep, fit quiet. No wind. No rustling leaves. Just you and the slow hum of a world that forgot how to turn. Let's take a slow walk now, away from the cities, away from the chaos of sudden motion, and into what remains of nature. Suppose, somehow, that parts of life have survived the shock. Maybe deep underground. Maybe hidden in quiet forest valleys, shielded from the worst winds. You're one of the few who made it. And now, in this motionless world, you're trying to understand what's left. Let's pause in the twilight zone, the narrow band between Earth's scorched sunlit side and the frozen night side. This in-between ribbon becomes the only place where life might continue, where temperatures are neither infernal nor glacial. Scientists call this a Terminator line. And if the Earth stopped spinning, this strip of land would be humanity's last possible refuge. But even here, strange new rules govern everything. The sun doesn't rise or set. It just hovers in place, low on the horizon if you're lucky, casting eternal shadows. Plants wouldn't know how to behave. Their circadian rhythms, evolved over eons to follow the cycle of day and night, would malfunction. Some might adapt. Others might die confused, trying to flower in permanent sunset. You could try farming here. Build long, narrow fields that stretch along the twilight zone. One side facing constant daylight, great for solar panels, maybe. The other side a cold, dark reminder of what's just a few steps away. Crops would need to be bred for this new equilibrium, and you'd have to deal with strange winds, if they exist at all anymore. Because remember, weather no longer behaves the way we know it. Earth's rotation powers much of our atmospheric system. Without it, the jet streams collapse. Storms don't spin, they just drift, slow and chaotic. Rain might fall in straight vertical lines for days, weeks, or not at all. The hydrological cycle begins to fray. Clouds hover in place, heavy with indecision. The smell of rain becomes something nostalgic, like hearing an old lullaby you thought you forgot. Tides, too, are altered. Though they mostly come from the moon, Earth's spin adds complexity. Without rotation, the ocean's rhythm simplifies, but also becomes unpredictable in its own eerie way. Coastal areas flood or dry up permanently, depending on where they sit in relation to the moon's gravitational pull. Your favorite beach might be gone, replaced with marshland, or nothing but bleached shells and silence. Now let's talk about time. With no spinning Earth, how do you measure a day? There's no sunrise. No sunset. The stars no longer sweep across the sky. Clocks still tick, sure. But they feel hollow, detached from reality. Time becomes psychological rather than astronomical. Entire cultures that once worshipped the sun or aligned temples with the solstice are now left with ruins of meaning. Stonehenge would stand still under a sun that no longer moves. People might try to build a new kind of calendar, based on heartbeats or meals or battery cycles. Maybe society agrees that every time you sleep and wake, that's a day. But what if you never feel sleepy under the same light, or can't wake up in a frozen dark? It changes everything. Religions would adapt, or dissolve. New myths might arise. Children born after the stop would grow up never having seen a sunset. Try explaining it to them. The sky used to glow gold, then melt into purple, then fade into stars. They'd look at you like you were talking about dragons. Even language would shift. Words like tomorrow or evening would lose their meaning. People might speak in terms of light side time or cold hours. Everything gets reordered. And then there's your body. Your internal clock, your circadian rhythm, starts to fight you. It's always light, or always dark. Your melatonin levels go haywire. You either feel always sleepy or never tired. Some adapt by sleeping in scheduled shifts. Others begin to unravel. Mental health becomes a planetary crisis. Seasonal depression becomes permanent. Sunlight therapy becomes a currency. Artificial dawn simulators and blue light boxes become more valuable than gold. Let's not forget magnetism. Earth's magnetic field is powered, in part, by its spinning liquid core. Over time, without rotation, the field could weaken. That means more cosmic radiation reaching the surface. Aurora borealis might vanish, or become more common as Earth's shield thins. Your compass might not just spin, it might go quiet entirely. And if we really push this idea far enough, thousands, maybe millions of years into this still future, then tectonics could slow too. Mountain ranges stop rising. Earthquakes become rare. Volcanoes cool. The planet grows geologically silent. A once dynamic world becomes a museum of its former self. And yet, humans might endure. We're weirdly adaptable. Underground cities with artificial light. Moving settlements that slowly chase the twilight zone like nomads of old. A clockwork society that's half dream, half discipline. A species that refuses to stop moving, even when the world does. Let's zoom out now, not from a place on Earth, but from the Earth itself. Imagine drifting above this now motionless blue sphere, no longer turning beneath you. From space, it almost seems peaceful. A stillness that deceives. But we know better, don't we? We know what silence like this really means. From orbit, the Terminator line, the border between night and day, is no longer a sweeping band in constant motion. It has become a fixed scar wrapped around the planet. One half in blinding sunlight, scorched and cracked. The other frozen, shadowed, lifeless. And in between, a narrow stretch of twilight where humanity struggles to survive, clinging to equilibrium. In our rotating world, satellites dance across the sky. Communication signals beam down in perfect rhythms. But in this still Earth, that ballet is broken. Geostationary satellites can no longer serve most of the planet, because they were designed for a world that spins. The entire infrastructure of global communication begins to fail. GPS becomes inaccurate. Weather satellites stare at unmoving clouds. Space stations above begin to lose purpose, silently drifting over a changed world. And the consequences ripple downward. On Earth, time zones were once our way of taming the spin, slicing the planet into manageable hours. Without rotation, time zones become obsolete. Countries used to having mornings together now stare endlessly into night. Or light. Imagine a city like Tokyo plunged into eternal daylight while New York sleeps beneath a sunless sky. Cultures shaped by sunrise and sunset must rewrite their stories. Religions, too, start to fracture. Holy days tied to the setting sun or rising moon lose their rituals. Fasting until sundown, celebrating the solstice, these acts unravel in a world where nothing rises, nothing sets. Spiritual leaders search for meaning. Some say the world has been paused by divine design. Others call it punishment, or transition. Governments attempt order. Timekeeping councils are formed. Universal time becomes a literal thing, not just a system for astronomy, but a daily standard for everyone. Massive LED walls show countdowns to artificial days, urging citizens to sleep, to wake, to move through cycles their bodies no longer feel. The economy becomes twisted. Energy is everything now. On the light side, solar power is abundant, almost too abundant. Heat becomes deadly, and entire energy grids must be built to cool, not warm. Meanwhile, the dark side becomes a frozen vacuum where geothermal power and nuclear reactors are the only way to survive. Trade routes shift toward the twilight line. Cities are built sideways, long and thin, hugging the shadow. Architecture follows new rules. Sun-facing windows are blocked out, frost-proof insulation becomes gold. And in the psychological core of all this, people dream differently. Without a regular day and night cycle, our brains change. Melatonin cycles break down. REM sleep becomes erratic. Some people never dream again. Others live in a constant haze between waking and dreaming, never sure where the edges are. New disorders emerge. Sleep phase drift. Chronocollapse. Some claim they can see stars while awake. Others hear sounds that don't exist, phantom echoes of a rotating world now lost. Art transforms. Painters begin to depict only stillness, still oceans, still trees, still skies. Musicians compose long, suspended chords that never resolve. Filmmakers capture sunsets that never happened, trying to preserve motion through illusion. Entire movements of culture are born from this stillness. Neo-Twilightism, Solar Gothic, Chronorealism, and language, again, follows. The word sunrise becomes an idiom. To seek a sunrise means to wish for the impossible. Children born after the stop don't understand weather, or shadows, or the sound of thunder. A new mythology emerges, a collective memory of a time when the sky moved, when time was something you could feel in your bones. Elders become storytellers, whispering about the age of motion, like it was a fairy tale. Now picture a child standing near the edge of the twilight line. Their world is half-lit. They've never seen a sunset, but they've heard songs about it. They stare at the sun, frozen on the horizon like a painting that never dries. Their skin is always half warm, half cold. And they wonder, did the earth used to dance? Did we forget how? This, perhaps, is humanity's greatest strength. Even in the face of planetary stillness, our minds keep moving. We imagine. We adapt. We remember. Let's turn our gaze downward, into the soil, the ocean, and the atmosphere. Because a motionless Earth isn't just a change in scenery, it's a biological apocalypse. Without rotation, Earth's magnetic field would eventually begin to collapse. That swirling iron core that generates a protective shield against solar radiation? It depends on motion. And if that motion stops, so does the dynamo effect. Over time, the magnetic field weakens, then flickers out. And when it's gone, the solar wind comes knocking. This invisible wind, a stream of charged particles from the sun, has always been kept at bay by Earth's magnetosphere. But now, with no shield, it slams directly into the upper atmosphere. Bit by bit, our air begins to bleed away into space. Not fast. Not like a sci-fi vacuum. But slow and constant, like steam escaping a forgotten kettle. Oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, escaping in whispers. High above, auroras spread wildly across the fixed day side, no longer confined to the poles. Permanent green and red curtains ripple across the skies. They're beautiful and deadly. Radiation levels increase, especially near the subsolar point, where the sun beats down without interruption. The light becomes more than light, it becomes a threat. Meanwhile, ocean currents grind to a halt. These currents, like the Gulf Stream, are driven by the Coriolis effect and the rotation of the Earth. Without that spin, the great conveyors of heat and nutrients fall silent. The oceans stagnate. Stratification sets in, layers of water no longer mix. Warm water floats on top. Cold, lifeless water sinks below. Without the churning, oxygen doesn't reach the depths. Marine ecosystems begin to collapse. Plankton die first. Then the fish that eat them. Then the whales. Then the rest. The oceans begin to smell of sulfur. On land, the jet streams disappear. Weather systems stall. Rain becomes a local legend. Crops fail in one region from drought, and rot in another from endless drizzle. Agriculture, built for a turning planet, no longer functions. Farmers now rely on artificial light, hydroponics, and climate-controlled domes, if they're lucky. Outside these domes, plants struggle. Trees on the day side burn, trees on the night side freeze. Only those at the twilight band, those carefully curated by human hands, survive. Humanity becomes gardeners of a thin, habitable ribbon that encircles the world. And then, there are the animals. Birds no longer migrate. They have nowhere to go. No sunrises to guide them. No magnetic field to sense. They settle into confusion, then decline. Nocturnal creatures, confused by unending day or endless night, either adapt unnaturally, or disappear. Insects vanish in some regions, swarm in others. The delicate web of ecological balance unravels. But life is stubborn. Some bacteria thrive in the dark cold. Others flourish in the desert heat. And deep underground, in the crust, extremophiles continue as if nothing happened, because for them, it hasn't. In hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the sea, life remains ancient, unaware, undisturbed. The last truly normal Earthlings. Meanwhile, humans engineer new biology. Crops are gene-edited to grow without light, without seasons. Animals are bred for constant temperature extremes. Children are born in twilight clinics, and their bodies adapt faster than those of their parents. A slow divergence begins, humans of the light, humans of the dark, and humans of the edge. Skin tone, metabolism, sleep cycles, all drift apart. Evolution, pushed by stillness. And yet, in the heart of this quiet chaos, poetry blooms. Writers pen odes to the wind that once was. Children draw pictures of rotating globes they've never seen. Artists build kinetic sculptures that move when you touch them, just to remember movement. In the museums of this frozen world, you might find a globe on a spindle. And a plaque that reads, "Once, the earth turned. And we turn with it." Now let's venture inward, into the human body, the rhythm of your cells, and the beating of your heart. Because even though the earth has stopped, your body remembers the spin. Inside you is a clock. Not the ticking kind on your wrist, but a biological metronome, called the circadian rhythm. This 24-hour cycle governs everything from when you feel sleepy, to how your organs release hormones, to how your brain processes memory. And guess what? It evolved because the earth rotates. It is, in a way, the echo of the earth's turning, written into your genes. So what happens to that rhythm when the rhythm of the planet disappears? At first, chaos. Studies on humans in timeless environments, like deep caves or submarines, show that our bodies can drift. Some people settle into 25-hour days, others 30. Some cycle erratically. Some develop non-24-hour sleep-wake disorder, where the body simply refuses to align with any schedule at all. Without sunlight coming and going, there's no external cue, no anchor. In our still Earth, entire societies now rely on artificial lighting regimes. Dawn and dusk are simulated. Apartments on the day side have blackout panels and timed lamps to trick the body into feeling night. On the night side, homes are built like biodomes, glowing with synthetic sunrises. Children are taught from birth to live on the clock, not the sun. Sleep disorders spike. Depression, too. Melatonin, the hormone that helps you sleep, is confused. Cortisol, the hormone that wakes you, is lost. The brain begins to rebel against the stillness. In some, it goes quiet. In others, it becomes loud. Sleep paralysis becomes more common. So do lucid dreams. Hallucinations. Some say this era gave rise to the dreaming class, people whose internal rhythms no longer align with anyone else's. Dreamers who drift for days in their own time zone. And then, there's the heart. Your heart beats in rhythms too. It's sensitive to light, temperature, pressure. A planet that never rotates means one side is always hot, the other always cold, and that affects blood pressure, hydration, stress. People in the twilight band live relatively balanced lives. But on the extremes, on the subsolar furnace or the sub-nightside freeze, people change. On the hot side, the body evolves to release heat constantly. Pores remain open. Blood vessels stay dilated. Skin darkens, thickens, becomes better at reflecting radiation. Heart rates lower during the peak hours, in a kind of induced hibernation. On the cold side, a different adaptation. Blood vessels constrict. Fat stores increase. The body moves slower, sleeps longer, conserves warmth. Breathing becomes shallow and slow. In some towns, people speak in whispers, not because it's cold, but because everything has slowed. There are myths, even now, of people who've broken free of time altogether. Travelers who walk endlessly across the twilight band, never stopping, never sleeping. They are said to live between seconds. Whether real or not, these stories persist, because humanity cannot help but dream in motion. And in labs, time is being studied with urgency. Chronobiologists, the scientists who study biological time, now lead research into how to simulate rotation through neural stimulation. They create devices that pulse the brain with artificial dawns and dusks. Some even test spinning habitats underground, miniature Earths that rotate once every 24 hours, just for the sake of internal clocks. You might wonder, why not just adapt? Why not embrace stillness? Because deep down, we are creatures of rhythm. We breathe in waves. We walk in cadence. We think in pulses, in songs, in cycles. Stillness, for us, is foreign. Even now, in your sleep, your body turns in bed. It itches to move. It remembers gravity's tug as the earth spun beneath it. It remembers sunrises. It remembers spinning shadows. You are, in every sense, a child of motion. And the still earth? It is like a parent who went silent, leaving you listening to memories, beating inside your chest. Let's now imagine the oceans, the deep, dark lungs of our planet. Normally, they breathe with the planet's spin. Tides swell and recede, guided by both the pull of the moon and the centrifugal force created by Earth's rotation. But now, with the spinning stopped, the oceans have changed in ways that feel almost mythic. First, the tides. Without the spin, there's no centrifugal bulge at the equator. Gravity becomes the sole sculptor of ocean shape. The water begins a slow, monumental migration, sliding toward the poles, pulled by the Earth's own slightly squashed shape correcting itself. Sea levels at the equator fall by hundreds of meters. Meanwhile, at higher latitudes, they rise. What's left behind in the equatorial zone is shocking, an ancient seabed revealed. Fossilized coral reefs. Lost underwater ridges. Forgotten canyons carved by ancient rivers. Entire submerged islands now bask in the open air, steaming in the heat. Some call it the Great Draining. Whole continents seem to rise again, unveiled like ghosts. And then there's the air. Ocean currents and atmospheric winds were once deeply intertwined with the spin. The Coriolis effect, born from rotation, had always bent currents and storm systems into beautiful spirals, hurricanes, trade winds, the Gulf Stream. Now, gone. The oceans become strange, lazy giants. Surface currents stall. Deep water circulation, the so-called global conveyor belt that shuttled warm and cold water across the planet, slows dramatically. The oceans begin to stratify. Without churn, the top layers warm under relentless sun, while the depths turn cold and oxygen-starved. Marine life struggles. Fish migrate erratically, confused by changing temperatures. Coral reefs bleach not just from heat, but from stagnation. Algal blooms spread like paint spilled across a still canvas, devouring oxygen and turning regions into marine deserts. On the night side, frozen oceans harden into plains of glittering ice. Beneath them, however, hydrothermal vents still glow, still churn, still support life, tiny oases of warmth in a planetary deep freeze. In the twilight band, though, the strip between perpetual day and night, the seas become the new heart of Earth. Here, the balance holds. The waters remain liquid, churned by faint winds and modest temperature gradients. New currents emerge, weaker but consistent. Islands in this band become the most desired real estate on Earth. Some float on artificial rafts, others are built atop volcanic ridges exposed by falling seas. They are homes for those who wish to remain close to the rhythm of water. Some people begin to live in houseboats again. Fishermen become navigators of newly born inland seas, vast puddles caught between the bones of continents. Sailors use the stars differently now. With no sunrise or sunset, no clocks tied to the sun, time at sea is measured by the behavior of plankton blooms or the pulses of bioluminescence in the water. Entire religions rise around the ocean's new stillness. Some believe that the seas are slowly choosing where life will survive. Others think the oceans are listening, recording humanity's response to the planet's silence. There are whispered myths of tide mothers, people who can feel the shifts in deep currents through their dreams. And yet, science still pushes forward. Oceanographers now use floating labs to track microcurrents. They study ancient water trapped under ice, searching for secrets in its chemistry. Robotic submarines dive deeper than ever before, no longer hindered by swirling chaos at the surface. In the stillness, they find forgotten species, transparent creatures blinking in bioluminescent Morse code. And in all of this, the ocean becomes memory. It remembers when Earth spun. It remembers the music of tides, the spinning of gyres, the heartbeat of currents. And as you lie in bed, you might remember too, waves crashing against a shore, tides rising to meet the moon, salt wind in your hair. These memories live deep inside you, passed down through generations of sailors, swimmers, and wanderers. Even now, the sea calls to that part of you. The part that knows how to float, how to drift, how to listen. Because even if Earth no longer moves, the ocean still breathes. And through it, perhaps, so can you. Let's now shift our gaze upward, from the water's surface to the realm of wind and air. The sky, once a dynamic stage of swirling clouds, rushing jet streams, and migrating weather fronts, is now subdued. Without the Earth's spin, the atmosphere has changed just as profoundly as the oceans. First, the winds are gone. Not completely, but in the way we once knew them. Before, Earth's rotation twisted air currents into the graceful spirals of cyclones and trade winds. The Coriolis effect once shaped everything from monsoons to hurricanes. Now, with no spin to lean on, the sky falls still. Storms no longer dance, they drift. Air pressure gradients still exist. The sun's constant heat on the day side causes warm air to rise, and the cold of the night side causes air to sink. This creates sluggish, massive circulation patterns. Think of it as a planetary scale convection loop, simple and slow. On the sunlit side of Earth, vast thermal columns climb like invisible giants into the sky. In the center of that eternal day, hot air builds into a column so tall and dense it warps the weather. Near the equator, deserts expand outward, dry and blindingly bright. Higher latitudes grow humid, filled with mist and clouds that never leave. Meanwhile, on the frozen night side, the atmosphere collapses into quiet. Cold air pools and thickens, hugging the surface. Snow falls gently but never melts. Aurorae, once seen only near the poles, now ripple and dance freely across the dark sky, whispering in green and purple ribbons. It's a silent, permanent winter, wrapped in magnetic light. In between, the twilight band, the atmosphere balances precariously. Here, soft winds still stir. Gentle breezes waft through forests of silver-frosted trees. The sky here is always painted in colors of sunset, lavender, copper, pale gold. It's a world caught in eternal evening. This twilight zone is where most of humanity has gathered. It's where oxygen levels remain stable, where temperatures hover in survivable ranges. The air is clear and clean. Crops are grown in domed biofarms powered by solar energy from the nearby day zone. Wind turbines, though less efficient, line ridges where gentle currents still flow. People wear light thermal suits and carry oxygen packs, not out of necessity, but as precaution against sudden atmospheric shifts. And then there's the sound. Or rather, the absence of it. The air is heavier now, quieter. Without jet streams and constant turbulence, the sky has lost its roar. Planes no longer fly. Satellites drift in silence. Birds, fewer than before, glide in slow arcs, their wings barely making a sound. On windless nights, you can hear your own heartbeat if you're still enough. Some say the still air carries voices. That if you listen carefully, especially in high altitudes, you can hear whispers of the past, ancient wind songs from when the world still turned. Others claim to hear their dreams spoken aloud in the night sky, like the planet is finally answering back. And yes, humans have adapted. New sky-watching rituals have emerged. With the stars fixed in the same place each night, constellations no longer rise and set. They hang, like ancient murals, telling stories that never change. Children learn them like alphabets. Lovers name them like memories. The North Star is no longer a guide, it is a neighbor. Without weather patterns moving heat across the planet, temperatures become more extreme. But people build. Habitats are designed with advanced insulation. Cities in the twilight zone have sky roofs, transparent domes filled with filtered air, heated with sunlight piped in through mirrored towers. It's a world designed around light and breath. The atmosphere becomes a kind of monument. To motion, to silence, to the rhythms we once took for granted. Some communities build wind chimes atop towers, hoping for the occasional gust to sing through them. Others create massive fabric sculptures that only dance once a month, when rare upper-level currents visit. And still, the air waits. Waiting for movement. For life. For us to notice it, to honor it. And perhaps, it dreams of spinning again, of swirling with joy, of racing across valleys, of screaming through mountain passes. Perhaps the air remembers. As you lie in your bed tonight, feel the quiet around you. Feel how the air holds you, gently and invisibly. It might not move like it used to, but it's still here, wrapped around you like the softest lullaby. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. You're standing outside at twilight, and the sky seems to lean in just a little closer. That quiet hum in the air, the subtle tug at your balance, it might be your inner ear remembering a world that spins. But now, in our thought experiment, Earth has stopped. No more gentle pirouette every 24 hours. No more rising sun, no more sweeping stars across the night. Just one side of the planet locked into eternal day, and the other submerged in perpetual night. At the equator, the sudden halt would have flung everything outward. But now, in the eerie silence that follows, the consequences keep unfolding. Let's talk about heat. Without rotation, Earth would no longer distribute sunlight evenly. The sun-facing side would bake endlessly under an unblinking star, while the dark side would become a frozen wasteland. Over time, the planet would resemble the moon, scorched on one side, glacial on the other. And in between, along the Terminator line, might be the only livable zone, a narrow twilight strip where temperatures could hover at survivable levels. But that thin twilight line wouldn't stay stable. Atmosphere, heated on the day side, would rush frantically toward the cold. Giant wind systems would form, permanent jet streams screaming across the planet. Winds hundreds of kilometers per hour, barreling from light into darkness, dragging sand, dust, debris, and everything not bolted down into constant storm cycles. Ocean currents would change too. They're powered not just by temperature, but by Earth's spin. The Coriolis effect, responsible for everything from hurricane rotation to the path of trade winds, would vanish. Instead of graceful spirals, you'd get strange, stuttering flows. Huge gyres might collapse. Dead zones could spread. You might assume, well, we'll just live underground or in sealed environments. But think deeper, weather patterns would become unpredictable. Rainfall wouldn't be seasonal anymore, it would depend on location relative to the eternal sun. Agriculture would be a nightmare. No natural day-night rhythms for growth. Crops would need artificial cycles. Even then, soil temperature would become a problem, dry and cracked on the sunny side, permafrost hard on the dark. And what about sleep? Humans evolved with circadian rhythms tuned to Earth's 24-hour spin. We rely on the slow rising and setting of the sun to anchor our melatonin, body temperature, and mood. If you lived in the eternal light, you'd struggle to know when to rest. Constant daylight has been shown to cause insomnia, depression, and disorientation in Arctic regions today. Now apply that globally. On the dark side? Total blackness. Even if you built cities lit by artificial means, your biology would slowly rebel. Some scientists speculate that without a day-night cycle, society would fragment into personal clocks, each person living in their own time bubble. A planet of insomniacs and dreamwalkers, disconnected from shared rhythms. Let's sprinkle in a fringe idea. Some theorists suggest that an Earth without spin could eventually become tidally locked, like the moon is to us. If the Earth ever became tidally locked to the sun, an unlikely but not impossible event over billions of years, one hemisphere would always face the sun. This would lock in the chaos forever, one blazing desert, one frozen void. And here's something that doesn't get enough love, Earth's magnetic field. It's generated by the spinning, molten iron core. No spin? Over time, that magnetic field could fade. Without it, our planet becomes vulnerable to solar radiation. The atmosphere, exposed to solar wind, could slowly erode, like what happened to Mars. That's right, a non-spinning Earth could lose not just its seasons, but its very air. So here we are, floating in an eerie silence, halfway between light and dark, wind and stillness, heat and ice. The world still exists, but it's not our world anymore. It's something else. Alien. Familiar only in name. And in this strange limbo, you might look up at the stars, frozen in their places in the sky, and wonder if motion was ever the illusion, or if stillness is the real trick. Imagine now that centuries have passed. Generations born into a world that no longer spins, where stories of the rising sun are just myths. Children grow up under either the endless light or the eternal dark, never knowing the soft hush of twilight. What was once a 24-hour rhythm has unraveled into timelessness. On the day side, civilization clings to the twilight edge like moss on a stone, always shifting, always retreating or advancing, depending on the sun's intensity. The land closest to the sun is scorched beyond habitation. Cities built too far toward the light are abandoned, skeletons of steel warped by unrelenting heat. Solar panels once promised infinite energy, but even they degrade under constant exposure. Temperatures rise past the point where even heat-resistant crops can survive. Desalination plants choke on dust. People adapt, yes, but only with monumental effort. Underground farming, climate domes, elaborate shade towers, each more extreme than the last. This is not progress. It is survival. Now step into the shadow. On the dark side, a different kind of ghost story unfolds. Without sunlight, temperatures plummet far below freezing. Ice creeps in like a patient invader, locking oceans into glaciers, covering mountains, burying forests that once thrived. In this eternal night, life depends on geothermal energy and creativity. Entire cities are built beneath the surface, powered by volcanic heat and insulated by miles of rock. Above ground, it's deathly silent. Snow falls, but not gently, it's sharp, wind-driven ice that erases any trace of life. And in the midst of this silent void, imagine one human stepping out of a subglacial city, gazing up into a starfield that never moves. No sunrise. No sunset. Just stillness. Time itself feels stretched, uncertain, as if clocks are merely suggestions. Without the day to mark movement, even seconds lose meaning. But here's the twist, the people who live in these polar extremes begin to evolve. Not physically, necessarily, not yet. But psychologically. On the day side, society grows more anxious, high-strung, competitive. Productivity becomes the religion of the light. Work never ends when the sun never sets. On the night side, cultures become introspective. Spirituality blossoms in the dark, stories passed around like candles in the void. Art flourishes here, slow and reflective. Sleep becomes sacred. Some even believe the darkness is alive, that it listens, and occasionally speaks. And somewhere in the Terminator zone, where day meets night, where light is dim and temperatures hover just above freezing, the last vestiges of old Earth's rhythm flicker. Cities here are mobile, built on rails, designed to chase that narrow ring of twilight as the planet slowly wobbles on its axis. These people are nomads of dusk, never seeing true day or true night. This narrow ring becomes the lifeline for trade, communication, shared knowledge. But it's also a place of philosophical tension. Those from the light side say, the sun is life. Those from the dark side say, the stars are truth. And those in between? They say, both are lies. Only change is real. It's here that you begin to grasp a strange, poetic reality. Without rotation, Earth becomes a planet divided, not just physically, but ideologically. And yet, in this fractured world, humans remain achingly human. They still sing. They still dream. They still fall in love under static stars or beside flickering lava pools. Some even tell bedtime stories, starting with "Once upon a time, the earth used to spin." And you, the listener, still wrapped in your blanket in a warm room on a spinning earth, can only wonder what kind of lullabies would rise from a world without a turning sky. Because sometimes, when we try to imagine the unimaginable, we realize just how lucky we are to live on a world in motion. Close your eyes now and drift deeper, deeper into that imagined world where Earth has stopped spinning. We've wandered through light and dark, cities and shadows, but now let's slow time itself and ask a quieter question: what happens to the air we breathe? You see, when Earth rotates, it drags the atmosphere along with it. Winds form. Jet streams dance. Storms are born, tumble across continents, and disappear into ocean spray. This circulation isn't just background noise, it's the pulse of the planet. But take that rotation away, and everything changes. Without rotation, global wind patterns collapse. The Coriolis effect, which normally bends winds and spins hurricanes into elegant spirals, vanishes. In its place, silence and chaos. Imagine vast columns of air, still heavy with warmth from the endless sun on one side, beginning to surge outward, seeking cooler places to rest. Massive convection cells form between the scorched daylight and the frozen dark. Air rushes across continents in unbroken walls of wind, carving canyons and deserts, lifting oceans into airborne mist. On the day side, the air heats and rises, hotter than anything we know now. Entire swaths of atmosphere swell like a balloon, rising vertically in slow, thunderous currents. Higher and higher, until they reach the stratosphere and drift outward, carrying with them dust, spores, moisture, and memories of what Earth used to be. Then, like a breath, the air descends on the night side. Colder now, heavier, and sharp with frost. It collapses downward in massive downward drafts, settling into silence. These gravity-driven winds are fierce, constant, and deafening. But no one hears them in the frozen dark. And in between, at the twilight ring, lies a place where winds curl and swirl gently, like a whisper between extremes. This zone becomes the last haven for calm air, where trees still sway softly and birds, if any remain, can glide without being torn from the sky. Here, oxygen lingers, balanced precariously between too much and too little. But this balance is fragile. With no spin to stir the atmosphere, greenhouse gases accumulate unevenly. Carbon dioxide pools in strange places, thick and invisible. Oxygen clings to lower elevations. Storms no longer spiral, instead, they crawl slowly in straight lines, sometimes sitting over one place for weeks, flooding, lightning, rain with nowhere else to go. Somewhere in a sealed dome near the Terminator, a group of scientists studies the air like it's a poem. They chart its movements, listen to its rhythms. They've learned that even in a motionless world, the sky still breathes. Just differently. Slower. As if the planet itself is falling asleep. One scientist writes in her journal, "The wind speaks only when we stop long enough to hear it." And you, listening now, might sense that truth too, that silence isn't absence. It's presence. Awaiting. And if you could stand quietly in that strange world, beneath the fixed stars, you might hear it, the exhale of a tired planet, the sigh of air moving where it must. Even in stillness, there is flow. Even in silence, there is sound. Even without spin, Earth remembers how to breathe. Imagine now the oceans, those vast, mysterious basins of memory, settling into a new rhythm on a planet that no longer turns. Without Earth's spin, they would stop their graceful bulging toward the equator. The centrifugal force that once tugged water outward disappears. Seas begin a slow migration, drawn back toward the poles, pulled by gravity alone. It wouldn't happen overnight, nothing does in a world where the clock has lost its hands, but gradually, inevitably, water moves. In the equatorial zones, where once waves rolled warmly across beaches, the sea begins to recede. Not like a tide, not like a storm surge, but like the long inhale of a sleeping god. The ocean pulls away from the middle of the world, inch by inch, as if remembering older shapes, older truths. Vast stretches of seafloor begin to emerge, ancient plains that haven't seen daylight in eons. Fossilized coral, shipwrecks, forgotten creatures trapped in stone, all rising into the air again. And the poles? They swell. The Arctic and Antarctic, once islands of ice surrounded by frigid sea, become inland oceans. Gigantic reservoirs of water gather at the ends of the Earth, slowly turning those once barren zones into cold, alien archipelagos. Currents, once driven by rotation, begin to falter. The great conveyor belt that carries warm water from the tropics to colder zones stutters and stalls. The Gulf Stream, the Kuroshio, the Humboldt, all names whispered in textbooks, begin to fade into stillness. Without rotation, the sun heats the oceans unevenly. Dayside oceans turn into slow, simmering baths. Nightside seas become slushy, near-solid deserts of brine and frost. And then there's the life within. Plankton bloom and die in place, no longer spread by tides. Whales, if they remain, drift through oceans where sound travels strangely. Without the movement of Earth, even sound itself behaves differently undersea. Echoes linger longer. Songs stretch into haunting calls, suspended in vast, unmoving salt. You might imagine a lone diver, descending in the twilight belt, the line where day kisses night. The water here is still and surreal, lit from above by a sun that never sets or rises. The diver turns in slow motion, suspended in a liquid world that no longer spins. She looks up, and the surface doesn't ripple. She looks down, and a strange calm holds everything in place. No tides. No turbulence. Just quiet. It would take thousands of years, maybe millions, but eventually, new equilibrium emerges. Lakes dry out in some places, grow deeper in others. Rivers flow in unexpected directions. Inland seas form in mountain basins. And coastlines? They become legends. Cartographers of this future world won't use borders drawn by nations, they'll trace the shape of survival. Underneath it all, tectonic plates still shift. Earthquakes still tremble. Volcanoes still cough steam into the sky. But even these seem gentler now, like the planet has taken a step back, softened its breath. In stories told by future dreamers, the oceans are described not as restless or wild, but as vast mirrors. Reflecting the stars above, unmoving, undisturbed. A canvas stretched between memory and time. And for those few who remain, humans, creatures, watchers of the deep, the ocean becomes something else. Not just a body of water, but a stillness to listen to. A place to remember that movement isn't always necessary. That depth exists even in quiet. In a world where Earth no longer spins, the sea holds its own kind of grace. Not chaos, not silence, but patience. And as you fall asleep tonight, perhaps you can hear it, the sound of water remembering how to be still. Word count, 1254. Let's turn now to the winds, those invisible architects of weather and whispers of change. In a spinning world, wind is a wild symphony, shaped by pressure differences, the heat of the sun, and most of all, the Coriolis effect, the way the rotation of the Earth deflects air currents into graceful spirals and steady jet streams. But if the Earth stopped spinning, the wind would begin to forget its dance. At first, the atmosphere, still in motion, would continue spinning around the Earth's surface for a while, like the steam still rising after you turn off the stove. This leftover momentum would whip up colossal storms, perhaps circling the globe once or twice before settling. These would be winds of myth, furious, relentless, planet-sized tempests scraping against a suddenly still Earth. But over time, even that motion would fade. And then, the sky would change. Without Earth's spin to help mix air, the atmosphere becomes sluggish, stratified. Weather begins to stagnate. On the side of the Earth perpetually facing the sun, warm air rises but doesn't spiral away. It gathers, broods, piles into a permanent column of heat. On the night side, the cold thickens, sinking downward into valleys like ancient breath. Air stops moving east to west. Instead, wind patterns begin flowing only from light to dark, desperate to balance the temperature difference. Imagine long, slow gusts blowing endlessly from the sunlit side of the planet toward the frozen night. These winds carry heat with them, trying to equalize an imbalance that nature never prepared for. Clouds, once nomads, now take up residence. On the day side, they hover, thick and shimmering, reflecting sunlight back into space. On the night side, frost and ice crystals accumulate, building silent palaces in the upper atmosphere, structures never meant to exist under ordinary conditions. And without the spin to distribute tropical storms, hurricanes vanish. Tornadoes stop twisting. The dramatic violence of weather quiets into eerie, persistent stillness. A kind of unearthly calm settles over the world, not peaceful, not hostile, just suspended. Picture a tree standing in this new windless world. Its leaves don't rustle. Its branches don't sway. It exists in silence, as if caught inside a photograph. Beneath it, the soil begins to cool, dry, crack, because even evaporation slows down. Without wind, the air becomes heavy. Movement becomes memory. Now imagine what that would feel like to you, standing in it. You step outside, and everything is still. Your breath fogs the air, not because it's cold, but because the air no longer stirs. You raise your hand to feel for a breeze, and nothing greets you. Birds no longer glide, they flap awkwardly or cling to branches. Planes, in this era, must find new ways to fly, because even flight changes without wind. You hear your own heartbeat. Your own footsteps. Your own quiet thoughts, unchallenged by the usual rustle of leaves or distant howls of weather. You are left with yourself, in the silence of the earth. But silence is not emptiness. In this still world, sound behaves differently. It carries farther. A whisper can echo across valleys. The call of a child might linger like a chime. And so the planet becomes, in its own way, a place of listening. There's something haunting about it, and something beautiful. In ancient cultures, wind was seen as a spirit, unseen but powerful, a breath of the divine. Without it, the planet feels as if it's holding its breath. Waiting. Watching. Contained. And in this breathless place, you sleep differently. Your dreams become deeper, stranger. Time begins to lose its grip. Days no longer pass in cycles. Weather no longer marks the rhythm of your week. There is only the slow passage of warmth to cold, and the slow return. So, as your eyes close tonight, picture yourself in that still world. A place where the sky no longer races, but simply is. Where wind has gone to sleep, and you, too, are drifting into its hush. Imagine standing in a place where time itself feels unhooked from rhythm, where one half of the sky forever glows and the other forever sleeps. No sunrise. No sunset. Just a frozen ballet of shadows and light, stretching endlessly across the globe. This is what the Earth becomes in the absence of spin, a planet split in two. Let's step into the twilight zone, the narrow band between eternal day and eternal night. This belt, circling the planet like a luminous halo, is where life would stand the best chance of surviving. Not too hot, not too cold. A delicate equilibrium. But also, a land of constant dusk, where the sun hangs forever on the horizon, like a secret waiting to be told. In this place, shadows never shift. Your face always half-lit, half-hidden. The sky, painted in permanent golden blues. This twilight world becomes humanity's refuge. Cities begin to form here, stretching east to west, hugging the border between extremes. Crops are grown in careful lines, facing sideways toward the slanted sun. Solar panels tilt permanently in one direction. Life itself leans, stretches, adjusts. But it wouldn't be easy. Without a rotating Earth, magnetic fields begin to weaken. The molten outer core, responsible for generating our protective shield against cosmic radiation, starts to lose its dynamo effect. Over decades, perhaps centuries, the magnetosphere dwindles. Invisible but essential, it fades, leaving the planet exposed. Now, charged particles from the sun, normally deflected by Earth's magnetic bubble, start to creep in. They kiss the atmosphere, disrupting satellites, darkening the sky with strange auroras not just near the poles, but above your own home, right in the twilight belt. Curtains of green and purple shimmer in silence, reminders of a shield that used to stand guard. Technology begins to falter. GPS systems drift. communications hiccup. And slowly, society must learn to live not only without spinning days, but without reliable protection from space itself. Yet humans are persistent. We build. We adapt. Underground cities are imagined, shielded from radiation, temperature extremes, and volatile sky. Solar technology is reimagined to work in constant dusk or unbroken night. Homes are designed like ships, insulated, rooted, self-sustaining. Children grow up knowing only one direction of light. Maps are redrawn. Calendars become irrelevant. Festivals are now timed by temperature fluxes or solar flare cycles. Tomorrow becomes a softer word, and evening no longer means anything at all. In time, even sleep changes. Without circadian rhythms guided by spinning light and darkness, people begin following different internal clocks. Some sleep for long stretches. Others drift in and out, guided by body, not by sky. Time becomes subjective, fluid, almost artistic. And then there's the emotional shift. In the stillness, in the hush of this new world, emotions surface in new ways. Music becomes slower, more meditative. Stories become longer, more poetic. Humans begin to cherish memories more than moments, because moments are hard to define now. You don't say, "Remember that morning?" You say, "Remember that feeling?" And so, culture evolves. Art becomes softer. Architecture becomes curved, gentle. In a world where the earth no longer spins, everything begins to slow, not in sadness, but in reverence. Time is not gone, it's just no longer ticking like it used to. Now, imagine yourself standing at the edge of that twilight land. 1 foot in shadow, 1 foot in light. The wind has calmed. The stars are clearer. The silence is complete. And you realize something. Even if the earth stops spinning, the universe keeps going. The planets still dance. The stars still shine. The great spiral of the galaxy still turns. And you, here on this unmoving world, are still moving through it, riding on something much larger, much older, much more patient than time itself. You close your eyes. The world no longer turns. But you do. Inside. Always. You're standing at the equator now, in this quiet alternate Earth, where the world no longer spins. No eastward push beneath your feet. No Coriolis force nudging winds to the right or left. No sunrise. No sunset. Just an eternal twilight zone, a perpetual boundary where day and night cling to the horizon like two rivals who refuse to yield. Here, the sky is dim and amber-hued, like the soft lighting of an old theater just before the play begins. You can almost hear the silence humming. The air is eerily still, until it isn't. Because without the Earth's rotation, wind patterns collapse into chaos. The great conveyor belts of jet streams? Gone. In their place, massive vertical air columns form. Hot air rises in the scorched sun-facing hemisphere and crashes down, cooled, on the dark side. This forms a brutal, globe-spanning wind system that behaves more like a monstrous breath than a gentle breeze. Deserts swell across the sunlit hemisphere. Rainforests dry up. Once green continents become cracked mosaics of red dust and heat haze. Plants adapted to cycles of light and dark begin to wither. Pollinators vanish. Seasons stop. Migration patterns disintegrate. Even time itself, not in the physics sense, but in the human sense, becomes strange. What's a day when the sun no longer moves? And then there's the ocean. Oh, the ocean. The rotation of Earth helps drive the Coriolis effect, which steers currents like the Gulf Stream. Without it, the oceans turn sluggish and confused. Heat doesn't distribute. Cold water pools and lifeless darkness. Coastal areas flood from tidal bulges stuck in place, while others dry up. Coral reefs bleach from temperature extremes. Fisheries collapse. The sea becomes a slow, warm stew, one you probably don't want to swim in. But nature is stubborn. Even in this grim portrait, some forms of life adapt. Extremophiles, mosses, deep-sea creatures, the tenacious organisms that always seem to find a way. they start to claim new niches. Frozen forests begin to glimmer with bioluminescent fungi. The boundary zone, neither day nor night, becomes a strange Eden of sorts. Low light, soft winds, and steady temperatures, like an alien world, yet comfortingly familiar. Of course, humans aren't extinct. But we're different now. Our cities have shifted toward the Terminator line, that narrow band between day and night. Solar panels stretch across the endless sun. Massive heat shields protect settlements. Life on the dark side is ruled by geothermal and nuclear energy. Agriculture is underground, vertical, and bioluminescent. And we tell time by clocks alone. No more counting sunsets. No more shadows moving on sundials. Time becomes unanchored, a concept, not an experience. Historians argue whether this collapse of natural rhythm would affect our psychology in subtle but profound ways. Would we feel adrift? Mainstream science agrees. Without rotation, Earth's systems would be drastically destabilized, atmosphere, biosphere, oceans, all reshaped. But here's a fringe idea. Some theorists propose that in the very long term, an unspinning Earth might actually reach equilibrium. That new systems would emerge. That perhaps, millions of years in the future, the planet would settle into an eerie, habitable stillness, like a cosmic pause button, not a death knell. It's an idea that humbles. That even if we lose the rhythm of day and night, the song of life might still find a beat. So, take a slow breath in this half-lit world. The sky doesn't change. The stars stay still. But life always looks for the next place to bloom. Let's take a deeper breath now and imagine something strange. You're lying down in the Terminator zone, the twilight belt where it's neither day nor night, watching the sky, not for the sun or the moon, but simply for the stillness. Above you, the stars hang motionless. No spinning Earth, no rotation to drag them across the night. They stare back like unblinking eyes, eternally fixed in place. You might not notice right away, but your body would. The lack of a rotating planet does something quietly devastating to the human sense of time. We're creatures of rhythm, biological metronomes built on light and dark, activity and rest. Without sunsets or sunrises, without the feeling of morning or the deep exhale of night, our minds begin to drift. Circadian rhythms falter. Sleep becomes unmoored. Depression and confusion sneak in like fog. Scientists have seen it happen in polar explorers, submarine crews, and astronauts. A kind of psychological vertigo. And that's just the human part. What happens to the magnetic field? Earth's spinning core helps generate a protective magnetic bubble around the planet, the magnetosphere. This invisible shield deflects solar radiation and protects our DNA from being unraveled by cosmic rays. Without rotation, the magnetic dynamo might slow or even stop. The auroras would vanish. Satellites would fry. Cancer rates might rise. GPS systems would fail. Migratory animals, whales, birds, bees, would lose their sense of direction. The compass itself would become a relic of a time when Earth still danced. Now, here's something beautifully ironic. Some aspects of life might flourish. In the long term, stable climates in the twilight zone might allow for new ecosystems. Plants adapted to constant low light might thrive, deep blues, purples, and greens replacing the bright colors of a sun-drenched world. Trees might grow slowly, with thick leaves and glassy bark. Insects with large eyes and slow wing beats could take to the air, while mosses and fungi cover the ground in glistening carpets. Imagine bioluminescent fields, forests that glow at night not because of the moon, but because of the plants themselves, using light they've stored during the long, still days. It sounds like science fiction, but some researchers have already begun engineering such plants in labs. And in this world, where the wind no longer whispers from the east, and the sun no longer rises or sets, music changes too. Artists might compose symphonies inspired by stillness, by waiting, by the feeling of time melting into atmosphere. A slow cello echoing in a cave chapel built into the Terminator cliffs. A choir of children singing under sapphire skies. There's something sacred about imagining how we'd survive, even flourish, in a reality that strips away the very rhythm we were born into. The earth that stopped spinning is a terrifying place, but not a silent one. Life hums on. It finds the new normal. And just like always, it adapts not just physically, but emotionally, artistically, spiritually. And so do we. Now, let's walk a little further into this motionless world, into a place we rarely consider, the deep ocean. Down here, beneath thousands of meters of unmoving water, Earth's rotation has always played a quiet but powerful role. The spinning Earth contributes to the Coriolis effect, which helps drive ocean currents, those slow rivers within seas that carry heat, nutrients, and life across the globe. But if Earth stopped spinning, the ocean currents would collapse into chaos. The Great Conveyor Belt, the global thermal-haline circulation, would stall. Warm water would no longer drift from the equator to the poles. Cold water wouldn't sink and swirl back. The deep sea would grow still, cold, stagnant. Nutrients would settle in the depths, unreachable by surface life. Coral reefs, already fragile, might starve. Fish populations would shift or vanish entirely. But beneath that silence, something ancient would remain. Hydrothermal vents, deep-sea chimneys spewing heat and minerals, would continue to burble, fed not by surface weather but by Earth's inner warmth. Around them, strange, eyeless creatures would still thrive, tube worms, ghostly crabs, and translucent eels, surviving in utter blackness as they've done for eons. They do not care if the sky spins. They do not mourn the sun. Above sea level, a different stillness would take root. The atmosphere, no longer being churned by rotation, would begin to settle into layers. Rainfall would become rare in some places and torrential in others, locked into permanent patterns. Some regions would be eternally dry, vast deserts under static skies. Others would endure endless storms as pressure systems grind against one another without the usual motion to sweep them away. Now imagine the life forms that would evolve here. On the edge of one such storm, a permanent thunderfront, plants might develop waxy skins to survive the pounding rain. Their roots would go deep, anchoring them against the wind. Creatures might evolve to hibernate in the calm and burst into activity during brief lulls. Their entire biology tuned not to day and night, but to storm and stillness. And then there's us. Our technologies would change. Solar panels would have to track a sun that never moves. Cities might be built in spirals to gather light evenly across their structure. We would tell stories about the time when the sun used to rise, and children would laugh in disbelief. Would we learn to live better, more slowly, in a world where time no longer rushes forward? Would we meditate under unmoving shadows, hearing our own breath for the first time? Would we find peace in the quiet? Or would we search for ways to spin again? Either way, life would go on, just differently. It always does. Even in the face of planetary stillness. Let's take a moment now to return to the sky. Not to the sun that never moves, but to something more elusive, the stars. You see, with no rotation, the entire concept of time as we know it would change, especially when we look upward. Today, because of Earth's rotation, the stars appear to drift across the night sky in slow arcs. But in a world that no longer spins, the stars would become statues. Fixed. Eternal. Each one pinned in place like a thumbtack on a velvet ceiling. You'd walk outside and see the same constellations every single night, in the exact same position, never shifting, unless you moved yourself. Imagine ancient people living under that sky. No star charts needed. No guessing what's rising in the east. No Polaris moving, no Orion hunting, no Big Dipper dipping. Just a frozen sky. The constellations would become mythic symbols, unchanging guides. A culture might form entirely around a single fixed pattern in the heavens, never suspecting that the stars had once danced. And in that stillness, something poetic happens. Humans, curious as ever, would look upward and ask, if the stars no longer move, have we stopped moving too? And maybe, just maybe, they would build towers, not to reach the sky, but to understand why it stands still. A child born under an unmoving constellation might grow up and invent new ways to track time, not with clocks, but with shadows, or wind, or heartbeat. Time itself would be reborn in a new language. But the consequences of that frozen Earth sky would extend far beyond philosophy. Our satellites, for example, those tiny mechanical stars we've launched into orbit, depend on Earth's rotation. They use it for timing, positioning, and stability. In a stopped world, orbital dynamics would shift. GPS systems would fail. Global communication would slow or collapse. Our digital world, so reliant on motion, would falter. And yet, perhaps something deeper would emerge from the ruins. A different kind of technology. A civilization rooted not in speed, but in permanence. Architecture might change completely. Instead of building to accommodate shifting winds and light angles, we design with the eternal in mind. Solar farms could be placed precisely where the sun never moves. Crops would grow on the sunlit hemisphere year-round, never needing seasons. And on the dark side of the world, something even stranger might happen. Communities would adapt to the cold. Maybe they'd build underground, tapping into geothermal heat. Cities might glow with quiet bioluminescence, cultivated in deep caverns. Entire languages could evolve in darkness, shaped by sound and touch rather than sight. A person born on the dark side might never see their own face. There's a strange beauty in imagining these twin civilizations, one bathed in eternal day, the other swaddled in permanent night. Both completely alien to us. Both entirely possible. And across them both, a single shared wonder, the stars, unmoving. So if you ever find yourself beneath the night sky, try this: lie still. Don't move. Let the earth carry you. And for a moment, pretend it doesn't. Pretend you live in a world where every star is still, and every second lasts forever. Just breathe. Just listen. Because even in stillness, the universe hums. Let's journey deeper into the consequences, because there's one we haven't spoken of yet, and it's both subtle and profound. Without Earth's rotation, we lose something invisible, something most of us never think about: the Coriolis effect. This force, caused by Earth's spinning, is what curves the path of winds and ocean currents across the globe. It's why hurricanes spin, why trade winds flow the way they do, and why weather systems don't move in straight lines. Without rotation, the Coriolis effect vanishes. Wind no longer curves across the surface of the planet. The great air currents that encircle Earth collapse into unfamiliar patterns. The jet stream disappears. Storms, if they still form at all, move differently. They might become slower, more chaotic, or vanish entirely. Ocean currents would also be transformed. Right now, rotation helps drive massive gyres, huge circular currents in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. Without it, these gyres would weaken or stop. That would break the global conveyor belt of heat, disrupting weather far from the equator. Europe, for example, is warm not just because of the sun, but because the Gulf Stream brings warm water north. Without it, places like London could freeze. So ironically, some areas of the light side might cool. Others might overheat. The entire climate would shuffle into an unpredictable mess. Some regions would become deserts, others might drown under unending rain. Farming would be a completely different challenge. Crops we rely on today wouldn't survive. Humanity would have to reinvent agriculture from the soil up. But even more than that, the biosphere would undergo a dramatic transformation. Animals that evolved with a day-night cycle would suffer. Birds use the rotation of the Earth and the movement of the sun and stars to navigate. What happens when the stars no longer move? What happens when night never falls, or never lifts? Insects that emerge at night, plants that open their petals at dawn, entire ecosystems that depend on timing would be thrown into confusion. Biologists call this circadian disruption, when the rhythm of day and night is broken. And this wouldn't be a small shift. This would be a planetary identity crisis. Some species might adapt. Others would vanish. Humans, too, would feel it. Our brains are wired to respond to light and darkness. Without a natural cycle, we'd lose the cues that regulate sleep, hunger, mood. Depression and insomnia could spread in the light world, while perpetual darkness might breed an entirely new set of psychological conditions. A sunrise that never comes, a sunset that never arrives. It could change not just how we feel, but who we are. Yet even in this strange, divided world, people would continue. We always do. We'd light candles in the dark. Build solar towers in the light. We'd draw maps not of east and west, but of warm and cold, lit and shadowed. Cultures might develop on either side of the world that never meet, or perhaps someday they would, sending emissaries across the twilight border. Maybe they'd share stories of the old world, when the earth used to spin. Maybe they'd build monuments at the equator, the place where day and night wrestle in eternal dusk. A sacred ring, where time is always 6 o'clock. Neither morning nor night. And maybe, that's where we'd go when we want to feel the passage of time again. To stand where the world isn't dark or light, fast or slow. Just quiet. Just turning, in memory alone. Let's imagine now, in the soft hush of twilight thought, that the earth truly has stopped spinning, and we've had time, perhaps centuries, to reshape our lives around it. Cities on the light side have grown tall, glimmering with mirrored spires that reflect the constant sun back into the sky, shielding streets below from perpetual daylight. Entire architectures have evolved to manage the sun's glare and heat, deep courtyards, shaded corridors, underground sanctuaries. Life here is solar dependent. Energy is harvested in abundance, but always with caution. Crops are grown beneath filters, animals bred to rest without night. In contrast, the dark side has become a realm of silent ingenuity. Human settlements are few and clustered close, lit by soft bioluminescent towers and fueled by geothermal power. Greenhouses pulse with artificial dawns. People have adapted to the silence and the cold, wrapping culture in rituals of light. Art here glows, music whispers in soft echoes, and movement is slow, deliberate. And then, there's the border. The Terminator. A place that circles the planet in eternal dusk. Forever between light and dark. Neither day nor night. Here, perhaps, the most extraordinary things happen. Maybe this is where humanity meets itself most honestly. Not blinded by the sun or cloaked in shadow, but balanced in the quiet twilight. It's where traders from both sides might converge. Scientists, philosophers, dreamers. A line of cities glowing under a permanent purple sky, where the stars just begin to show and the sun never quite sets. People here might live lives full of rhythm, a kind of harmony unbroken by nightfall. Festivals every week, clocks set to the never-changing horizon. Children growing up without ever knowing true darkness or harsh glare. And yet, even in this slow world, time still moves. The earth may no longer spin, but the sky above keeps its secrets. The moon still orbits. The planets still wander. The stars drift in their ancient patterns. Seasons remain, caused by Earth's tilt, slowly shifting the bands of heat and cold. The sun's position over centuries may slide ever so slightly, forcing cities to migrate or adapt. It's a reminder, even a world without rotation is not frozen. It is still part of the grand, unfolding dance of the cosmos. And in that cosmic perspective, maybe something beautiful happens. Freed from the rush of days and nights, we begin to feel time differently. Not as minutes or hours. Not as deadlines or alarms. But as change. As growth. As memory. As the slow turning of thoughts and civilizations. Perhaps we would become better storytellers, better listeners. With no rushing clock to chase, we'd watch our children more closely. Read books without glancing at the time. Gaze at the stars for longer than 5 minutes. We might even sleep differently, twice a day, or not at all. Or only when we're truly tired, rather than when the sky tells us to. We'd be creatures of our own rhythm. And through it all, the earth, silent, unmoving, would still hold us. Spinning not in motion, but in mystery. A world still very much alive. Because time was never just about spinning planets or ticking clocks. It was always about us. The ones who notice. The ones who feel it pass. So now, as you lie still in the gentle hush of night, think about this strange, delicate planet of ours, spinning or not. Think about how finely balanced everything is. The tilt of the earth, the rhythm of the sun, the quiet pull of the moon, and how, even in thought experiments like this one, we uncover something real about ourselves. Because imagining a world without rotation isn't just about physics, it's about presence. Stillness. The kind we rarely allow ourselves. In the quiet, you can almost hear it, not the roar of spinning, but the hum of being alive. Of atoms ticking like tiny clocks. Of hearts beating like metronomes in the dark. Even if the earth stopped, you would go on, carrying time forward in your breath, your dreams, your memories. Tonight, maybe time doesn't feel like a countdown or a pressure. Maybe it's just a soft tide, gently pulling you into rest. Let yourself drift now. Not because night has fallen, but because you've chosen this pause. There is peace in imagining, in wondering, in letting your mind stretch out across stars and ideas. And there's deep calm in knowing that no matter how wild the scenario, the world always whispers back some kind of beauty. So sleep, explorer. You've wandered through impossible places, walked the edge of a motionless world, and returned with quieter thoughts. Tomorrow will come. The earth will still spin. But for now, be still. You've earned it. Good night.